thank you for putting this video on your computer or looking at it online, because if you're a Muslim, you've probably heard the challenge that from another Christian or any of the Christian preachers probably that are on television today, that Islam is not in the Bible. It's a religion of the devil. But from my study as a Seventh-day Adventist, looking back in the archives of world history, looking at the time of the Reformation and before and after, I come to realize that Islam is in the Bible and it's found in Revelation chapter 9. Yes, when Jesus was in heaven, he received a command from God, because over here in Revelation chapter 1, it says this: "The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him, to show unto every servant things which must shortly come to pass, and he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John." In other words, the message of Revelation 9 that had prophesied the coming of Islam was given by God himself through Jesus to the angel, to the servant John to write down. That is historically correct. In spite of what people want to say, in spite of what emotions say, what traditions say, it doesn't go along with world history or what's in the Bible. We're looking at Revelation chapter 9 today to show you as a Muslim where you are. Remember the previous presentation in this series on this website talks about the Old Testament, the children of the East. And now we've transitioned into about 600 years later, after the time when the wise men came to Jerusalem to bring gold, frankincense, and myrrh to Mary and Joseph and their son Jesus. This is something that needs to be kept in mind, that Islam is in the Bible, and we're going to go over that right now. Now, as a Seventh-day Adventist, we've had the eschatology, or the understanding of Islam in Bible prophecy, for a number of years. This is in the 21st century as we're making this. This information you see on the screen today we call the 1843 and the 1850 charts. The 1843 was what we call a Millerite chart, as Seventh-day Adventists do, or Protestants of that era. And it shows the arrows there that are yellow. They showed Islam. About 1/6 of the message back in the 1800s was Islam in Bible prophecy. As the Millerites disappeared off the scene and those people who were left became Seventh-day Adventists, which means they kept the seventh-day Sabbath as Ishmael, Isaac, and Abraham did, and they also believed in the advent of a second coming, of Jesus was returning. And in order to see the coming of Jesus again, we must go through a judgment. So those significant points are very relevant, I believe, to Muslims today, because the Quran is full of references about the judgment. And as we look at the chart here on the right of your screen, as you look at that on your computer, red arrows within Seventh-day Adventist eschatology, or the Seventh-day Adventist Church at the beginning of its understanding, beginning of its growth. 1/3 of our message was about Islam. 1/3, that's significant. On this chart, you'll see it there. And you can go to the website, you can also see these, you can download them or whatever and look at them and study them more, because it's very relevant for you today as a Muslim to know that there are Christians, and we are Seventh-day Adventist Christians who have this understanding, and we can talk to you about this. If you have questions about this, go to the contact portion of this website and email us a question. Don't give us a sermon. Don't give us a dissertation. Just ask a simple question, and we'll try to answer it for you. As we go on here, we see a chart again. This is with beasts and animals and an image there with a rock going to hit the feet. We see a buffalo. All these are significant because they represent something in the books of Daniel and Revelation. Later in this series, on this website, we're going to have more presentations about these beasts and who they are, because it does affect you. But this presentation is about where Islam is in the Bible. And that's what we're here to share that with you, in not a condemning understanding, but in a truthful understanding, as people from centuries ago understood the work of Islam. Now, on the screen right now, we're saying historical schools of expositors of Islam in Revelation chapter 9 prior to the Reformation. We're going to cover these reformers as far as the Christian world is concerned, because the biggest issue I have as I go out and I speak with Muslims is that they believe that they're in the Bible. But I haven't found very many Christians who believe that Islam is in the Bible. But let me cover these significant people within the world of Christian history. And we're going to show that these people are believing that Islam is in the Bible. On our website, IslamBibleProphecy.com, if you go back to the documents, you'll find 1944, June and July, Ministry Magazine. You can go back to those magazines, go back to June 1944 in the Ministry Magazine document. You can print that out. It shows by century, and it shows by Revelation chapter 9, the fifth trumpet and the sixth trumpet, and also the seventh trumpet, which we're not going to talk about today. But it shows them of who believed what, all the way from the time of Martin Luther. During the time of Martin Luther, when he was alive in the 1500s, and this was the time of Suleiman the Magnificent as well, to give you an understanding, Suleiman was coming up from Turkey and going through Hungary and sieged Vienna, Austria. This is when Martin Luther was alive. And this was an interesting position because the reason that this was all happening because there was honest seeking Catholic priests, Martin Luther, Zwingli, all these people, Wycliffe, 100 years before, were tired of what was going on within their church. And they were starting to question the blind authority to the Pope. They were questioning the things that had come in. And they're going back and reading the Word, reading the Bible, again, of what it was saying. These men started to stand and speak up about the great apostasies that were going on. Liquor, still in the church. Alcohol, people becoming pastors, the priests of the day were becoming alcoholics. This was not according to God's plan. In the 16th century, we have major people. We have John Foxe and John Napier. Foxe, Book of Martyrs, is a significant work. And these men all believed that Islam was in Revelation chapter 9. In the 17th century, Isaac Newton and many others, 15 others, were believing the very same thing, that Islam is in Revelation chapter 9. This was long before any of us are alive today saying that the Bible has nothing to do with Islam. But that's false. Our historic Protestant understandings of the Reformation, documented in the document I just mentioned on this website that you came to get this document, is there, that you can read it for yourself. The 18th century had major Protestant reformers that seminaries still use today. John Gill had a Baptist background. Matthew Henry and many others were understanding that Revelation chapter 9 was Islam. The 19th century, we had people like Albert Barnes, still used in the seminaries today, his understandings. But they don't use the understanding of Islam. Kind of interesting. William Miller and many others. In the 20th century, we have 6 more, all the way up through 1934 when this study was stopped, that we reference in the Ministry Magazine article of June 1944. And here we have a picture of the world of Islam. Within 117 years after Muhammad died, in this map, everything that's in green was controlled by Islam. I believe that God orchestrated this to protect the young Christians. Because when this happened, the church at Rome could no longer put its tentacles, put its footprint all over the Middle East. All it had was the footprint in Constantinople, which became the Eastern Roman Church, or the Eastern Roman Orthodox Church, which today we have spin-off of the Greek Orthodox, the Russian Orthodox. It all came out of this time frame. And these churches don't represent the significance of the Pope that the Roman Church does today, headquartered in Rome, Italy. So, here we had the Roman power could not come out. That's why the Roman Catholic explorers of Magellan, Columbus, could not go into the Mediterranean because it was all controlled by Islam. It means they could sail in there, but the Muslims controlled the land. They couldn't conquer it. So the Roman Catholic explorers went all over the world. South America, that's why South America today has 2 predominant languages, primarily Spanish, as well as Central America, and Portuguese in Brazil. And Spanish names are all over Philippines. Anybody that's a Filipino today probably has a Filipino surname. This was because that the explorers in Rome did not conquer the Middle East. They tried it with the Crusades, and I believe, from my study of history, that God held them in check. They could not take the Middle East back permanently. And so as we look at this story, we look at the history, we see the supporting evidence that God was directing, God was protecting, because the concept of alcohol, pork eating, praying to dead people, all these things were abominable to God. And God called His side of the family on Abraham through Ishmael to come and protect the truth. Now, my Muslim friend, you have a higher calling than you've ever dreamed before. The Bible talks about you. What are you going to do with your calling? Are you going to go off after traditions or what people say? Or are you going to go back after what the Injil, the Torah says? That's a challenge that you have to have as a Muslim. Because if you and I, as a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, you as a Muslim, and all the other Christians in the world and Seventh-day Adventists, if we don't go back to the foundation of our faith and see what Abraham taught, what the Bible's saying, how are we going to know what truth is? Are we going to listen to what man says, called theology? Or are we going to go back and read the Bible? Revelation chapter 9, verse 1. This is the chapter that Islam is in. And this is what it says. It says, "And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven, and unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit." I want to take a look at what him is. Who's him? I'm going to suggest to you that him is none other than Muhammad. Muhammad, I suggest, is the word him. Who is this story referring to? And we need to have that in mind as we go through the rest of the story. We're going to go over now and look at the bottomless pit and the key. What's a key? If you and I have a key, say to a car, it gives you and I the authority to go in and start the car and probably drive it if we have the key. In other words, the key is the authority. If you live in a town and all the houses are locked up and somebody says, you can have the house that this key fits. You go around, you find the house that it works in. This is now your home, according to what the man told you. So remember, a key gives you or I the authority to unlock and to go in and do something. So keep that in mind. Now, as we go on here, I'm going to go to Revelation chapter 20, verse 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to see two things here. Who had the key, what they did with the key, and about the bottomless pit. Verse 1 of chapter 20 of Revelation. Now, Muslims believe, their tradition says that the Quran was written as a direct revelation from the angel who got it from Allah and gave it to Muhammad, who gave it to others who wrote it down. As I understand what Muslims tell me, what you tell me, this is how the Quran came. I want you to consider what we just read in the book of Revelation, chapter 1, verse 1. It came from, the revelation of Jesus Christ came from Allah to Jesus, to the angel, to John. A direct lineage of understanding of where the revelation came from. So as we read this, I want you to have the confidence that this is coming from Allah Himself in the Bible. Verse 1, "And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key." If this angel came down from heaven, having the key, who gave him the key? It had to be coming from heaven, the authority. Lucifer is no longer in heaven. He was cast out back in Genesis. So in other words, the angel who came down had the authority coming from God Himself directly. And since the message was given to Jesus, it was Jesus who had the key, and Jesus who gave it to the angel to give to John as they put it in the book. So in other words, now the story is written. We're 600 years later in this prophecy from the time that John wrote it. And since Jesus went to heaven, my Muslim friend, it was Jesus who had the key here. And this is what He says. This is what He's doing with the key. "And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit, and a great chain in his hand. He laid hold on the dragon, the old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. There's 3 places in the book of Revelation the bottomless pit is used. One of them is right here. The first one is in Revelation chapter 9. The next one is in chapter 17. it doesn't really give us a definitive place where the bottomless pit is. But I'm going to suggest to you, when the saints are in heaven, there's no more sun, there's no more moon, because we're going to talk about that in the next video on Isaiah chapter 60. The sun and moon are darkened. The light comes now from the throne of God. And the bottomless pit, the Bible shows here that Lucifer can be bound in the earth. No more sun, there's no more moon. This is where he lives for 1,000 years. Well, the saints are in heaven, and the ones who were sinful are on this earth. Now, I know there's a great discussion about this in Christian community. Set that aside. We're not making that the issue here. What we're saying is Lucifer is stuck here. He's not going to heaven. He's here on this earth, walking around with no sun, no moon. Going to be very, very cold. That's one thing I know. And stumbling around as well. Revelation chapter 20, verse 2 and 3. It says, whoever of this power had the key, and he cast him into the bottomless pit, and he shut him up, set a seal upon him, that he should not deceive the nations no more. My friend, where are the nations at now? They're around the earth, on the earth. This verse here is telling us, and he cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should not deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years be fulfilled, and after that he must be loosed a little season. So Lucifer is bound to this earth, the bottomless pit, where the nations were, but they're all dead. And it tells us, as we read here, that till 1,000 years be fulfilled. 1,000 years is a long time. As we continue here in Revelation chapter 9, verse 2, I want to remind you, I'm suggesting the him here is Muhammad. The keys or the authority was given to him from the mighty angel. And remember, angels don't create. They're created beings. So this key that the angel was giving over here to Muhammad or the world of Islam, come from God himself. Revelation chapter 9, verse 2. And he opened the bottomless pit. This is Muhammad. He was given the authority by the keys, or the authority to do that, to open the bottomless pit or the earth. And there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by the reason of the smoke of the pit. Verse 3 it says, and there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. Back in the Old Testament, we read in the previous presentations, if you have not seen that, shut this one off and go back to the Old Testament about the children of the East. And look at that first before, because we build on that here in the New Testament or in the Injil. And here it is talking about smoke and locusts. We showed in Judges chapter 6, verse 1 through 6, verse 5, that grasshoppers and locusts are the same thing, and they're meaning a great multitude of the children of the East. And here we see also scorpions. Scorpions have power to sting and to hurt. We also see smoke. Very interesting thing about smoke. As I read and researched this historically, I came across many Protestant authors who said, this verse here talks about there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth. And they equate this with the errors of the Islamic faith. They said this is the cloud of Islamic errors over the Christian church. But I want you to look at a verse in Psalm 74, verse 1, and this is what it says. O God, why hast thou cast us off forever? Why does thine anger smoke against the sheep of thy pasture? I'm suggesting to you there's about 100 verses in the Old and New Testament in English, in the King James Version Bible, that talk about the word smoke. Many of the words there, they're used as smoke. When you start a fire, smoke goes up. But then it talks about other things of smoke. Smoke never means a mistake or sin. Never. But what it does mean, many places it means the anger of Allah himself against his chosen people. You see, Allah in heaven looking down at his church, at the Christian church that was started by Paul in Rome, was in great apostasy less than 600 years later. They brought alcohol into the church services and their communion services. They were drinking alcohol, not fresh grapes, but alcohol. They were eating pork. They brought the pork in because the Christians thought, well, we're going to show God that we're not like the Jews. We're going to eat pork to show that we're different than the Jews. This kind of logic is foolishness because the Bible doesn't change. God's command are still there. Praying to dead people, naming saints, changing the day of worship that Abraham, Ishmael, and Isaac worshiped on from the seventh-day Sabbath to the first day of the week. My Arab friends, my Muslim friends, who can speak English and Arabic, I want you to think about this. It was so interesting when this was explained to me that the Arabic word for Friday in English means gathering day. Go back and think about Moses and the children of Israel coming out of Egypt. There was a double portion of manna on Friday, or the gathering day. They picked a double portion because they weren't to work on the seventh-day Sabbath. Same thing with Abraham. The Sabbath was a day of rest. They were to have everything prepared for that particular day. This is what God's church was doing in Rome. And they were trying to force that concept all over the Middle East. That's why Islam was called to protect the Middle East from this great apostasy. That's why today, my Muslim friend, that you have in your understanding, we don't eat pork. But there's a whole lot more in the book of Revelation that Moses wrote that you need to look at about clean and unclean foods. Because if we're going through the judgment, we want nothing to hold us back if we go through that glorious time. I said a glorious time, not a discouraging time, not a time to be afraid, but you and I can have the assurance of Allah Himself of bringing us through this time of the judgment. So, smoke is not sin. Smoke is not a cloud of Islamic errors over the Christian church. Smoke is the anger of God against His professed people. Here we have a chart on the screen with the pictures of the beast and the man here with a big image with a rock coming down. We have a buffalo. We have other things there. These beasts and so forth are in the books of Daniel and Revelation. But the interesting thing, and you can go on our website and you can print this out as well, this particular chart, the red arrow shows the time that people who understand the book of Daniel, Seventh-day Adventists, understand this book of Daniel, that the great apostasy of 1260 years started in 538. My Muslim friends, when was Muhammad born? He was born after this time. So Islam was not responsible for the apostasy of the Christian church of the day. Not at all. But Islam was prophesied before this happening, back when God gave the authority to Jesus to give it to the angel to write it down in John the Baptist, because God was going to restore the children of the East to the power that they were promised in Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 15, 16, and 17, that the right of the firstborn, the strength of Abraham, is in him. So as the transition happened from the children of the East to your side of the family, Islam, you were given the power of the God of the Bible to restore and protect the religion of Abraham. As we look at this here, the green arrow, you notice it's a little bit further to the right than the red. And I want you to remember that Muhammad was born after the great apostasy had already been locked in and started, and the belief system was totally changed from the way it was during the time of Ishmael and Isaac's time. And also changed from the time that the wise men from the east, the children of the east, came to bring gifts to baby Jesus and his mother and her husband Joseph. This is serious because the world today in the 21st century is at one another's throat over the issue of Christianity and Islam. Both sides hurl challenges and charges against one another. My friend, let's go back. Forget traditions. Forget what we've been told by somebody else, and go back and read the Word Himself. My Muslim friend, if you have bought into the concept the Bible's corrupted, you have no reason to exist. The Bible gives the credibility for your existence and why and how God blessed you. In Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 15, 16, and 17, you were given a double portion of blessings. That's biblically, and that was sound because God said it through his prophet Moses. Peace be upon his name. My friends, it's time we lay down our preconceptions and pray and read and ask Allah of heaven to give you the understanding of what's right and what's correct. The God I know is willing to lead you and direct you. These words we're sharing with you is straight from the Bible, and also history backs this up, and that's why we're showing this in the historical sense. Revelation chapter 9, verse 4. And it was commanded them, the them here is Islam, that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their forehead. I'm suggesting to you that we as Seventh-day Adventists have come to realize that the seal of God is a seventh-day Sabbath. It's a seal, it's a culmination, a coming together of what the Sabbath is all about. It's a seal because if by God's power, his people who read the Bible and see what the Sabbath means, it means sanctification, it means holiness. It means gathering on Friday and setting aside for the seventh-day Sabbath to be ready to worship Allah. It's so significant, but the seal of God is in the forehead. It's not a seal in the hand or anything like that, but it's in your belief system. It's in your belief system. And we believe and know that it's a seventh-day Sabbath. So the seventh-day Sabbath, and this is kind of interesting, what the world of Islam has to say about this situation. And here we have a document called Prophet Muhammad's Charter of Privileges to Christians, letter to the monks of St. Catherine's Monastery by Dr. A. Zahor and Dr. Z. Hogg, and this was copyrighted in 1990, 1997, all rights reserved. So we give them the credit. We didn't find this. This is on the internet for you to look at. And we have seen other things in The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbon. He uses a similar statement, not with this clarity. And we have Edward Gibbon's statement on our website. This one will also be there shortly, written down so you can read it. At the end of this little narrative, as we go over this, I'll show the website where you can go and look at this yourself and read what it says, what this agreement here was made, or the covenant that was made. It says here, this is agreement that Prophet Muhammad made with these monks in this monastery of St. Catherine's here. It says, in 628, remember when was Muhammad born? 570? Okay. When did he leave Mecca to Medina? In 628, Prophet Muhammad is granted a charter of privilege. Excuse me, I read that wrong. In 628, Prophet Muhammad granted a charter of privileges to the monks of St. Catherine's Monastery in Mount Sinai. It consisted of several clauses covering all aspects of human rights, including such topics as the protection of Christians, freedom of worship and movement, freedom to appoint their own judges and to own and maintain their property, exemption from military service, and the right for protection in war. Now, as we go down here, we're going to go over this point by point. This is a message from Muhammad Abdullah as a covenant or an agreement to those who adopt Christianity near and far. We are with them. Verily, I, the servants, the helpers, and my followers defend them because Christians are my citizens, and by Allah I hold out against anything that displeases them. No compulsion is to be on them. In this video series, we've shown you this green map. Islam controlled this area. They had a right to protect the people. In other words, they operated a real republic. They were giving a word that they were going to protect this group of people. And there was a difference among Christians. There was a difference. Neither are their judges to be removed from their jobs, nor their monks from their monasteries. No one is to destroy a house of their religion, to damage it, or to carry anything from it to the Muslim houses. Should anyone take any of these, he would spoil God's covenant and disobey his prophet. Verily, they are my allies and have my secure charter. against all that they hate. No one is to force them to travel or oblige them to fight. The Muslims are to fight for them, or to fight for the Christians who are real Christians. If a female Christian is married to a Muslim, it is not to take place without her approval. She is not to be prevented from visiting her church to pray. Their churches are to be respected. They are neither to be prevented from repairing them, nor the sacredness of their covenants. No one of the nation of the Muslims is to disobey the covenant till the last day or the end of the world. Now, on the bottom here, I have the website where you can go look at this yourself. This is not a Christian website. This is an Islamic website. A few months ago, I had the privilege of speaking in a Muslim meeting in a great seminar held in Sydney, Australia by Dr. Sheikh Laban. And in this seminar, they put together a booklet to give out to the Christians and all the Muslims who attended. This, what I just read to you, was listed there by the Muslims to let the Christians know that they had a big brother there to protect them. Now you may be, if you're a Christian watching this, you may be laughing right now. But you know, all sides of the family had problems with sin. The devil is not going to let any side of the family rest. And you may be thinking, well, what about Muslims this and what about that? Well, what about Christians this and what about Christians that? What about the Ku Klux Klan being Christians here in the United States of America? What about the Christians who brought the Crusades and literally killed thousands, hundreds of thousands, up to millions of people during the Crusade to establish the so-called right of the Christianity in the Holy Land that never took place? That the Dome of the Rock Mosque is now sitting on the temple site to protect it from a false and apostate Christians who want to rebuild the temple. My friend Muslims, the Bible is letting you know that you are in the Bible in a positive way and give the history of what your people actually have gone through. As we look at the Quran and reading the English translation, Yusuf Ali, it's called The Meaning of the Quran. I know, my Muslim friends, that the Quran is recognized in the Arabic language form, but I can't read Arabic. And only 18% of the world of Islam can read Arabic and articulate it. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist Christian. I can read your English translations, and I enjoy them. I use them in my presentations. And this is what it says in Surah 9, Al-Tabarah, verse 29. Fight those who believe not in Allah nor His last day. What the Quran is saying, you're to challenge people, to fight people who don't believe in God nor the end-time events. And we as Seventh-day Adventists, in the chart we've already shown you, we do Daniel and we do Revelation. And there'll be more sermons on this website, because we teach and we show what's going to happen at the very end of time. Fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which hath been forbidden by Allah and His apostle. My Muslim friends, Seventh-day Adventists do not drink alcohol in the sense that it's not in our right as an agreement with the Scripture to do so. But unfortunately, there's many Seventh-day Adventists, and as I've traveled the Islamic world, there's a lot of Muslims who do drink alcohol. But that's not condoned by Islam nor by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, but especially by the Bible. The Bible is not condoned because it talks about people who drink and get drunk as fools. In other words, the Seventh-day Adventist Church forbid what's been forbidden. We don't eat pork. Don't do alcohol. And other things the Bible forbids in Leviticus chapter 11 about clean and unclean. And it says, as I go on here to read, which hath been forbidden by Allah and His apostles, nor acknowledge the religion of truth, even if they are of the people of the book. You see, all people of the book or the Bible don't teach the same thing. This is why in Revelation chapter 9, verse 4, there is a difference. And the difference was over the issue of the seventh-day Sabbath, among other things. That's the key issue. Pork eating, liquor, changing the day of worship from the seventh-day Sabbath that Ishmael, Isaac, and Abraham worshipped on to another day that was never ordained by God. The church at Rome claims the authority to change that. But the written word of Allah does not give them that authority. I stand before you to let my Muslim know that you are in the Bible and you have a high calling. Allah is calling you back to your roots, back to who you are, back to the religion of Abraham. It says, even the people of the book, until they pay tax, jahiz, and willing submission and feel themselves subdued. You see, my Christian friends who may be watching this, if you're not obeying what's in the book, then you're not walking with Allah. If you are following the dictates as you read in the Scripture, and you are praising Allah for revealing them to you, you'll be blessed. You'll be blessed greatly because you'll have the blessings of heaven upon you, and you will not have to fear what's coming to us in the last days. Because in the Old Testament, we saw how Allah brought in the Midianites, the children of the East, to bring judgment upon the people of Israel because they had went back to idols and they were in great sin and apostasy. At the same time, my Muslim friends, the Midianites were destroyed because they had filled their cup of sin full, and they were destroyed as well by Gideon. This isn't a presentation of only one-sided. We have to look at it balanced from both sides of the family. In Surah 3, 1:13 and 14, it says this, not all of them are alike of the people of the book or a portion that stand for the right. They rehearse the signs of Allah all night long and prostrate themselves in adoration. They believe in Allah in the last day, enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong. They hasten in emulation in all good works. They are in the ranks of the righteous. Down here at the bottom of this slide, I have Christians are not all the same. That's my writing as the speaker. That's true. Christians aren't all the same. Muslims, you aren't all the same. You have Sunni, you have Shia, you have Sufi, and sects within that group. You have folk Islam that may be done one place in the Islamic world and not done in another. At the same time, Christianity isn't much difference. Christianity has idols in one place, no idols in another. Or the church at Rome has idols in all of its churches all over the world. But the Allah of heaven, the God of the Bible, is calling all sides of the family back to reform. He's calling us all back to the great worship of the one high God. And he showed that Jesus lived this life on this earth, walked about as a human being so that you and I can look at and copy and emulate. Because he loves us so much, he gave something so near and dear to him. He gave us Jesus to show how to live. Because like your Quran says, in Surah 19:19, the angel said unto Mary, we wish to give you a holy son. She said, how can I have a holy son when no man has touched me? And the angel said, that's easy for us. That same gift of holiness that was given to Mary's son can be given to you and I. Anybody on this earth can have that if we ask for it. Can have that if we've asked Allah to forgive us of our sins and to go beforehand to the judgment. It says here in Revelation chapter 9, verse 6 and 7, and to them it was given that they should not kill them. This is talking about the world of Islam. They now have a charge. We're now talking about the Ottoman Empire. And it transitioned away from Muhammad. Muhammad's been dead for many years. Abu Bakr's passed away. And it says, and it was given them that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was as of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. And they had in their hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. And they had breastplates, as were breastplates of iron. And the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots, and many horses running to battle. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men. for 5 months. Now, on this map, on this chart right here, there's an arrow showing you the 5 months. In the Bible, in prophecy, 5 months, since the Bible was written in a Jewish vernacular, the Jewish length of a month was 30 days. So we had 30 days times 5, which is 150 days. Within the study of the book of Daniel, we come to realize, prophetically speaking, a year is a day in Bible prophecy. So we're talking about 150 years. And the arrow is showing here in the chart just before Constantinople fell to the Ottoman powers. In other words, the power of Islam was getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and was given power to hurt, but not to kill. And so when it finally had those big cannons set up and started to shoot at the walls of Constantinople, and they eventually collapsed, that's in the 6th trumpet. It starts right there. But it's kind of interesting how God gave the power to the world of Islam, because He gave the world of Islam gunpowder first before anybody else had it in the Christian world. Verse 9:11. The time frame here between the 5th trumpet and the 5th trumpet and the 6th trumpet. And this is what it says. And they, talking about Islam, this is the subject of Revelation chapter 9. They or him or who, it's all Islam. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. You know, as we just had read about the horses, and that's it. I'm going to go back and read that. Let's go back and look at that here, just real quick. I want to take a look here, and in Revelation chapter 9, verse 6 and 7, it says this, and in those days men shall seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses, prepared unto battle. And on their heads, as it were, crowns like gold, their faces were as the face of men. I had the privilege this last summer of going to Istanbul, which used to be Constantinople. And I went to the Ottoman Military Museum. As I walked down this museum, it's just fantastic because I'm into history, I like it. It showed helmets that the horses wore. They went all the way from their nose to the top of their head. And they had reliefs cut in so the horses' nostrils could breathe, and relief for the eyes so that they could see. And they went all the way up to the ears. And so in Bible, what we just read here, it says, and the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses. In other words, if you look at the head of a horse coming at you, it kind of looks like a grasshopper or a locust. But these were shining with gold. In the museum, I saw gold horses' helmets and brass horses' helmets. And you look at them quickly, they look like a grasshopper. They're long and skinny, and it looks like they have legs on them. So the Bible is correctly identifying the name that God gave to the world of Islam, or the children of the East in the Old Testament. And as I walked over this museum, I saw swords that were curved. They were called sycamores. And this is what the Muslims use, because as they would ride their horses and they would fight, they would swing their swords, and they weren't straight like the Christian swords, which would stick in something. You had to fight to get it out. It's kind of gruesome, but it's just kind of interesting, is that the German swords and the Christian swords all look like crosses. And I want to tell you, the way Isa died was not on a sword, or to represent a sword. That was the devil's way that's put a great divide between the world of Islam and the people of the book who obey what's written there. The sycamores were curved, so they would fight. When they would hit the opponent coming at them with a horse, the sword would slide off them and leave a large gash, and they would ride on. My friends, Allah tells us what's happening, so we know. So there's no doubt in our mind. And as we go through this story, these things, as I've studied and studied for years and gone to museums in Turkey and looked, I have been so impressed because God is so narrative. He explained things so well once you start connecting world history. But the sad thing today, I know of very few Christian churches that study history in their understanding of prophecy. They don't. They just condemn Islam and cast them off and go on. But as we go on here in this story, in Revelation chapter 9, verse 11, it says this, "And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon." We established that the bottomless pit is this earth. Many denominations, many people who believe the Bible, claim to believe the Bible, say it's a hole in the ground where the devil lives. That's not supported in Scripture at all. It's the earth. And it's interesting here, the word angel in Strong's Concordance means messenger. Now, Islam really never had a king over them. There was leaders, but the real leader of Islam yet today, who is it? Who's the messenger to Islam today? Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon his name. That's the messenger of Islam. Here it says an angel. But when you look at angel in the Strong's Concordance in English, it means messenger. So it was a messenger of the earth. And remember who empowered, back in Revelation chapter 9, verse 1, 2, and 3, who empowered with the keys? The keys came from an angel who got them from heaven, and he gave them to the world of Islam, who had power over the earth. You may think I've never heard this before, and I probably would say you haven't. But this is historically speaking. And Seventh-day Adventists have this understanding in the study of the Ottoman Empire. There is a reason, as we go through the next few verses, you're going to see the calling that the world of Islam had for a specific calling. The word Abaddon and Apollyon means destroyer. My Muslim friend, you were called historically to be a destroyer. A destroyer of apostate Christianity. That's the power you were to destroy. The power that brought in unclean foods. The power that claimed to change the seventh-day Sabbath to the first day of the week. The power that they claimed the power to make saints in heaven. They had the power to tell you what to eat when God said, don't eat it. My friends, just as Allah called your side of the family when you were called children of the East, you're now locusts because of your immense size. You were called to stop the onslaught of this great apostasy that was coming upon the whole world of a false church. And now we start to see these priests who said, I don't agree with this. I don't agree with this. The Bible doesn't agree with that. Martin Luther and all the other reformers were starting to come up. Wycliffe, all these men were starting to question the power of the church at Rome. And this is narrated here about the world of Islam. More detailed power about the church at Rome is found in Daniel chapter 7, Revelation chapter 13, and also chapter 12, as well as the answer of how this is to be combated in Revelation chapter 14. All these are future messages. But my Muslim friend, God was calling Islam for a high calling to protect His church, who is starting to say, what's going on at Rome was not right. Here we have the green map again. And you see the world of Islam controlled everything in green, all the way from southern France down through Spain and Portugal. At this point in time, they were starting to lose the power in Spain. But North Africa was Islam, remained Islam, all the way out to western China, what we know as Afghanistan today, and the stands. Iran, Iraq, all this was Islam. The Arabian Peninsula. Very interesting. And as the Muslims took this area, slaves were taken from the Muslim people, moved to Malaysia and Indonesia to work on plantations, and today those countries are Islamic. Revelation chapter 9, verse 12, it says, one woe is past, behold, there come two woes more hereafter. And the sixth angel sounded. Now we're moved from the fifth angel or fifth trumpet over to the sixth angel and sixth trumpet. And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar which is before God. And this is coming from what we call the temple right here. This is the place, we have it here so we know what it is in the time of Moses and the children of Israel coming out of Egypt. And this is what was built. This was given as a pattern coming down from God. And here we see in what we call the holy place, because Allah dwelt in the next place over called the most holy. The red arrow points to where the voice came out of, and here we have a better showing of that. It's the four horns of the golden altar. The four horns of this golden altar. And this is where the voice came out of. And this is where the work of Jesus as a high priest, because the high priest has to be a human. It has to be somebody who walked this earth as a human being. And Jesus was given that ability because he received a gift of holiness before conception. He was unique. And so as he's ministering in heaven for us today before he comes back, before Allah, Allah has the final decision on all these things. But this is where Jesus was ministering in heaven. And so his voice is coming out of the four horns of the golden altar. Verse 14, this is what it says. Saying to the sixth angel, which had the trumpets, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. As you look at this map, we're talking about four caliphs in the world of Islam. And I don't know, I haven't had time to check this out, but I was speaking in Turkey a few weeks ago to a Muslim audience, as well as Seventh-day Adventist. And I had a Muslim man raise his hand, waving. He said, what you're saying is true. He said, we have four caliphs. They're going to be coming from this area. And I have not had time to check this out, but I had other people confirm it. My friends, the Bible's saying four angels. And there were actually four caliphs, or four leaders in the world of Islam. And this is what they were given. This is what they're told to do. It says, and the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour, a day, a month, and a year, for to slay a third part of men. Previously in this chapter, they were to hurt like scorpions. This is the first command they were given to slay. Now, the time here, this may seem confusing, but if 1 year equals 1 day in Jewish terminology as the Bible is written in, this is how John the Baptist thought as a Jew, even though people want to make it only Greek. This is what it means. We look at the hour. An hour means 15 days. A day is 1 year. A month is 30 years. And a year is 360 years, for to slay a third part of men. In other words, this prophecy was for 391 years and 15 days. My friend, as a Seventh-day Adventist, I stand here before you because this prophecy was true. The Millerite movement predicted the end or the demise of the autonomy of the Ottoman Empire from looking at this prophecy, looking at the time frame, and predicted 2 years before it happened that the Islamic power of the Ottoman Turks was going to lose something, or something was going to happen. In May and June of 1840, the man who made this prophecy, Josiah Lynch, got very specific. He said on August 11th, 1840, the Ottoman Empire was going to lose its something or other, its autonomy. Some people thought they were going to fall, be destroyed, but that wasn't the case. They lost their authority because at this point in time, the old emir, or the leader, the sultan of the Ottoman Turks in Constantinople, or Istanbul, had just passed away. His 16-year-old son took over. The Ottoman Empire was crumbling. It was starting to get weak, decadent. And we know what happened later in World War I. But before that, the British did not want the French to be involved in the Dardanelles or the Bosporus that connected to the Black Sea. Because the British and French were still at war, pretty much just coming out of the New World where the United States was, and the British had won and became a Protestant country. And the Quebec province was a Catholic province in Canada. The rest of Canada was Protestant. Britain agreed to help this young sultan and protect them and let him remain in power if the British could put in Western law and do away with Sharia law. The British would lend this young sultan money so he could westernize and become like the British, did away with Islamic dress, and make Turkey a Western country, plus many other things. In my study, I realized, as I read the history, the British controlled Turkey. That's why the powers in Turkey, when the time of World War I came around, they lined up with Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany, because they didn't want anything more to do with the British, because the British had a stranglehold on them. And history shows that the Turkish power, or the Ottoman Turkish power, the power of the East, was giving 1/2 of its gross national product to service the debt to England. And the Turks were in a stranglehold by the West. That's why they went with Germany. And when they lost the war, that's why the Allied powers figured they had the authority to break up the Middle East and name the countries as they chose fit. My friends, prophecy from the Bible goes so much further than whatever people thought. Here we have a map. You'll see a line on it. You'll see those red arrows. Those red arrows are where the 4 angels or the 4 caliphs came from. But the green spot on that map is south of Vienna, Austria. Because Martin Luther was starting to speak out against the church at Rome about the great apostasy, and Charles V, who was the army out of Spain for the church at Rome, was planning to move into Germany and destroy all those reformers and to make all the Christians go back to idol worship and everything else. But God said, not so fast. He called your side of the family to move within 80 years. They were right in the spot where they were to be. They moved up. The walls of Constantinople fell with gunpowder that God permitted your side of the family to have before the Western world had it, because Allah was going to save those young Christian pastors who were formerly priests, because they were reforming to the right concept. This is what I'm saying. First time I'm really going back to what I'm saying. This is what my findings are. From 1449, when this charge was given by God in Revelation chapter 9, verse 13 and 14, to the 4 caliphs to move forward, they were in place outside of Vienna, Austria, within 80 years, to draw off the tempest of Rome from Martin Luther and the Reformation, because Rome was going to destroy the reformers. When the mighty Suleiman the Magnificent, who was a fair and just leader, from secular world history reports, when he came to Vienna and he encompassed Vienna, the church at Rome had to direct its army away from Luther in Germany to come over to Hungary to so-called protect Europe. That battle, over the course of a few years, gave Luther and the other reformers time to spread and to grow. The message of no idols, no pork, all those things went. But the sad thing is, many Christians did not listen to that. Most Christians today, outside of a Seventh-day Adventist and maybe another denomination, pork is in their diet. But what this did, the message went on up to Norway, Sweden, Scandinavian world, went to England. And so when Suleiman the Magnificent went back to Turkey, the battle was lost. The Church of Rome now had a reformed religion in its hands, and they could no longer kill, because most everybody believed that. Seventh-day Adventists are the last movement of the Reformation. We have continued to advance the religion of Abraham. We have gone back to the seventh-day Sabbath of Abraham and Ishmael and Isaac. We do not use pork, alcohol, or use it in our worship services. We do not eat pork or gamble. We worship one God, as Isa el-Messiah directed in the Bible. We do not pray to dead people. No man on earth or his priest can forgive sin. Only Allah can forgive sin. The Reformation still goes on in our church by God's direction today. My friends, there's a people on earth that still go by the Bible, as the Quran questions about the people of the Bible. Most Muslims are not even aware there's any Christians at all who believe the Bible. But Seventh-day Adventists still go by the Bible as our authority, not a man, or not by tradition, or not by what someone says. Read it and believe it. Going on here, Revelation chapter 9, verse 20, it says, "And the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils and idols of gold and silver and brass and stone of wood, which neither can see nor hear nor walk. Neither they repented of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornications, nor of their thefts." My friends, this is the end of the story of the fifth and sixth trumpet. Seventh-day Adventists have been given the right and the authority for many years before I was ever born, back in the 1800s. The charts that are on the screen right now today, we have the right to talk about Islam. There's much more we have to say. But this gives you as a Muslim the idea that there are a people the book, the Quran, talks about. There are people who rightly interpret the Bible. The sad thing to say, many Seventh-day Adventists don't believe what I just said to you because they're not aware of what our history is in the world and in the Bible. But my Muslim friends, there are people of the book who still obey what God called us to do, what God called us to be. The next presentation in this series is about Isaiah chapter 60. This shows what Islam is going to be from the time that you're watching right now, and this was made in 2012, to the very end of time. If you want to know where Islam is in the Bible, I want you to click on the other video and watch it. We're going to go over the Bible just as we're doing here and looking at the meanings of the Hebrew words, because it names Ishmael and Midian's children by proper name. And when Isaiah wrote this presentation, they had already been dead for over 700 years. My Muslim friends, the Bible's here. If you're believing the Bible's corrupted and you can't touch it, then you really don't have a justification for who Islam is and how God blessed it, how God called it, the God of the Bible. Bible-believing people who are watching this video, go back in world history. Go to our website, find the documents, trace them back yourself. Contact Seventh-day Adventists and says, I want you to explain this to me. Let's pray. Oh God, we thank you for the blessings that you have given us. The truth in the Bible of your history, of the work of the called people. We ask that you would guide us and you would direct us according to thy will this day. And we ask these things through the Son of Mary's name. Amen.